The internet is on fire right now, and the rumor shaking hip-hop might be the wildest yet. Fans are claiming Drake didn't just complain or throw subtle shots this time. They're saying he begged the Grammys behind closed doors to stop Kendrick Lamar from dominating the 2026 show. And what's even crazier, some insiders are whispering that emotions were running high, that this wasn't a power move, but a desperate one. Whether exaggerated or not, the narrative alone has sparked one of the most intense debates the culture has seen in years. This all comes at a moment when Kendrick's influence feels unstoppable. After a historic run, cultural dominance, and a fan base that seems more energized than ever, many believe Kendrick is positioned to completely own the 2026 Grammy stage. Performances, awards, and cultural impact. Fans say it could be a defining moment not just for Kendrick, but for hip-hop history. And that's exactly why the idea of Drake stepping in has people talking. Social media detectives have been piecing together clues, sudden industry chatter, vague insider comments, and unexplained shifts in grammar-related conversations. Fans believe something is happening quietly, far away from cameras and headlines. The theory is simple but explosive. Drake, watching Kendrick's momentum grow, allegedly reached out to industry power players, arguing that Kendrick's presence would overshadow everything. Some say he framed it as concern for balance. Others say it looked more like fear of being eclipsed. What makes this rumor hit harder is the history. Drake and Kendrick aren't just competitors. They represent two completely different paths to greatness. One thrives on dominance through numbers, visibility, and constant motion. The other moves with silence, precision, and cultural weight. Fans argue that if Kendrick controls the 2026 Grammys, it wouldn't just be a win, it would be a statement that the industry can't ignore. The Grammys themselves add another layer of mystery. Long criticized for politics, favoritism, and behind-the-scenes influence, the idea that someone could lobby against an artist doesn't shock longtime observers. What shocks people is who is being discussed. If someone at Drake's level feels threatened enough to intervene, fans believe it says more about Kendrick's power than any award ever could. Right now, nothing is confirmed, but the silence is loud. And in hip-hop, when rumors this big refuse to die, it usually means something is happening beneath the surface. The question is no longer whether Kendrick will dominate 2026, it's whether the industry will let him. The rumor that Drake allegedly reached out to the Grammys didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew slowly, fed by timing, silence, and a long history of competition that has never truly cooled off. Fans didn't wake up one day and invent this story. They connected dots that had been forming for years. And once those dots lined up, the narrative exploded. Kendrick Lamar's momentum toward the 2026 Grammys looks so overwhelming that even the biggest names in music might be nervous. At the center of the conversation is fear, not panic in the dramatic sense, but fear of irrelevance. Kendrick's recent run has been quiet but devastating. No overpromotion, no non-stop interviews, just impact. Fans believe that kind of dominance is far more threatening than loud chart success because it changes how greatness is measured. If Kendrick takes over the 2026 Grammy stage, it wouldn't just be about trophies, it would be about validation on the industry's biggest platform. Drake's name enters the conversation because of history. These two artists have been compared for over a decade, but they've taken opposite paths. Drake mastered ubiquity, numbers, presence, visibility everywhere at once. Kendrick mastered scarcity, appearing only when it matters and letting the work speak. Fans argue that the Grammys lean toward moments, not just metrics. And that's where Kendrick has the advantage. What pushed the rumor into overdrive was a shift in grammar-related chatter. Fans noticed sudden discussions about balance, variety, and avoiding dominance when Kendrick's name came up. None of it was direct. None of it was official. But in an industry known for coded language, it didn't go unnoticed. The idea that someone might lobby to limit Kendrick's presence didn't sound impossible. It sounded familiar. The phrase begged and cried spread fast, but many fans interpret it symbolically rather than literally. They don't imagine a dramatic scene. They imagine closed-door conversations, pressure disguised as concern, and influence framed as advice. In their minds, It's not about tears, it's about leverage. If Kendrick owning the 2026 Grammys would shift the culture permanently, then stopping that moment becomes strategic. Another reason fans believe the rumor stuck is Drake's position. He has nothing left to prove numerically, but legacy conversations are changing. Kendrick is increasingly discussed as an artist who defines eras, not just dominates them. Grammys play a huge role in those conversations. A historic Kendrick night in 2026 could reshape how the last decade of hip-hop is remembered, and who sits at the top of it. Silence from all sides has only fueled speculation. Drake hasn't addressed it. Kendrick hasn't reacted. The Grammys, as usual, haven't said anything. In hip-hop culture, silence isn't neutral, it's suspicious. Fans argue that if the rumor were completely ridiculous, it would have been shut down quickly. Instead, it keeps circulating, evolving, and growing louder. Online debates have split into camps. Some say this is just fan fiction fueled by rivalry. Others believe it reflects how power actually works in award shows. The Grammys have always been accused of politics, and fans point out that influence doesn't need proof to exist, it just needs access. Drake, Kendrick, and the Grammys all operate in rooms the public never sees. As Part 1 ends, the story isn't about whether Drake truly begged. It's about why so many people believe he might have felt the need to. Kendrick's rise toward 2026 feels inevitable to fans, and inevitability is what scares systems built on control. Whether this rumor turns out to be exaggerated or prophetic, it has already revealed something important. Kendrick Lamar's presence has reached a level where even the possibility of him dominating the Grammys makes the entire industry uneasy. As the rumor continued to circulate, fans began shifting their attention from Drake himself to the Grammys as an institution. For years, the award show has carried a reputation for quiet politics, selective recognition, and behind-the-scenes influence that rarely becomes public. That history is exactly why this narrative gained traction so quickly. To many fans, the idea that powerful artists might privately shape outcomes doesn't feel shocking. It feels expected. What makes Kendrick Lamar central to this conversation is how poorly he fits into the traditional Grammy playbook. He doesn't campaign loudly. He doesn't chase visibility. He doesn't flood voters with accessibility. Yet when he appears, the impact is undeniable. Fans argue that this kind of influence is dangerous to systems that rely on control through access. Kendrick doesn't need approval, but approval still amplifies legacy. And the Grammys remain one of the biggest legacy machines in music. Speculation grew when fans noticed how conversations around the 2026 show subtly shifted. Instead of celebrating the idea of a defining Kendrick moment, industry voices began emphasizing diversity of winners, shared spotlight, and avoiding one artist dominance. On paper, those ideas sound fair, but fans question the timing. Why now? Why when Kendrick's momentum looked strongest? To them, it felt like groundwork, soft language preparing the audience for a controlled outcome. Drake's alleged involvement fits into that theory not because he lacks success, but because he understands optics. A Grammy night dominated by Kendrick wouldn't just be a win for one artist. It would symbolize a shift in how greatness is framed. Kendrick represents depth, restraint, and cultural weight. Drake represents scale, reach, and consistency. Fans believe a 2026 Kendrick takeover would tilt the historical balance, redefining what the greatest looks like in hindsight. That's where the idea of private conversations becomes important. No public confrontation is necessary. Influence works best when it's invisible. Fans imagine scenarios where concerns are raised politely, about audience fatigue, about balance, about keeping the show accessible. None of it would sound hostile, but the effect would be the same, limiting how much space Kendrick is allowed to occupy on the biggest stage. Another reason this theory refuses to fade is the Grammys' track record with hip-hop. Artists who challenge norms often receive recognition late, inconsistently, or strategically. Fans argue that Kendrick has always been the exception, but even exceptions have limits. If his presence becomes too dominant, too undeniable, it threatens the illusion of neutrality. Award shows prefer control over certainty. Meanwhile, Drake's silence has been interpreted as strategic. Responding would legitimize the rumor. Denying it could invite more questions. Ignoring it allows it to pass, or quietly persist. Fans familiar with industry dynamics see silence not as innocence or guilt, but as discipline. When narratives circulate at this level, words are weighed carefully. What's striking is how little Kendrick's name actually needs to appear for his presence to be felt. Even in rumors centered on Drake and the Grammys, Kendrick remains the gravitational force. Fans see that as proof of power. He doesn't need to speak. His work has already positioned him as the artist everyone measures themselves against. As Part 2 closes, the conversation feels less like gossip and more like a referendum on control. Whether or not Drake truly reached out to Grammy decision-makers, fans believe the system itself may already be reacting to Kendrick's rise. The question now isn't who made the call. It's whether the Grammys can allow a moment so powerful that it reshapes the narrative they've spent decades managing. By the time Part 3 begins, the narrative surrounding Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and the 2026 Grammys had evolved from simple rumor into a full-blown cultural debate. Social media was ablaze, and fans everywhere were dissecting every possible angle. The central question wasn't just whether Drake intervened. It was why anyone would feel the need to intervene at all. And the answer, fans argue, lies in Kendrick's unprecedented cultural influence. Kendrick has always operated differently from most mainstream artists. He doesn't rely on constant visibility or viral moments to maintain relevance. His work is deliberate, led, and almost surgical in its timing. Fans argue that this level of precision is what makes him so threatening to the traditional structures of the music industry. A Kendrick moment at the 2026 Grammys wouldn't just be a performance. It would be a statement, a symbolic shift in power, and a demonstration of influence that extends far beyond music charts. The theory that Drake felt threatened doesn't exist in a vacuum. Historically, the Grammys have been criticized for opaque decision-making, favoritism, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. While Drake has long been one of the most celebrated artists in the industry, fans argue that even his influence has limits, especially when faced with someone like Kendrick, whose approach to artistry and legacy defies conventional rules. A Kendrick-dominated show could redefine how awards and recognition are distributed, and that possibility alone, according to fans, might have prompted intervention. Social media reactions have been relentless. Fans debated whether Drake's alleged involvement was motivated by ego, legacy, or genuine concern for the music's representation. Some argued that Drake is savvy enough to recognize that Kendrick's moment would be unavoidable and culturally historic. Others claimed it's possible Drake feared being overshadowed, given Kendrick's momentum and the narrative is built over the last few years. Every clip, every interview, and every public appearance of either artist has been scrutinized for hidden meaning, fueling speculation further. In addition to fan debate, the narrative expanded to the Grammys' internal dynamics. Industry insiders have long maintained that the show's voting process can be swayed subtly by suggestion, framing, and influence. Fans argue that if anyone were to lobby behind the scenes, it wouldn't require overt action, just strategic conversations, careful framing, and pressure delivered under the guise of concern. It's these invisible mechanisms that fans point to when they say Drake begged or cried, emphasizing that the story may be more about leverage than emotion. Timing also matters. Kendrick's dominance has been building steadily, with major releases, sold-out tours, and critical acclaim converging. Fans argue that 2026 represents the perfect storm, a moment when Kendrick could consolidate his cultural authority. In this context, any perceived attempt to slow or redirect that momentum, whether by Drake, the Grammys, or both, becomes not just plausible but predictable. For fans, this is less about personal rivalry and more about structural tension between an artist who controls his legacy and systems that historically resist uncontrollable influence. The emotional aspect of the story can't be ignored either. Whether the alleged begging is literal or metaphorical, it has become symbolic of how high stakes are in contemporary hip-hop culture. Fans see it as evidence that Kendrick's influence now extends beyond music into reputation, legacy, and cultural validation. His presence on a single stage could reverberate through an entire industry ecosystem, which makes the alleged intervention a measure of both respect and fear. What's fascinating is that Kendrick's team has remained silent throughout all speculation. No statements, no clarifications, just strategic invisibility. Fans argue this silence only strengthens the narrative, emphasizing Kendrick's discipline and control. By refusing to feed speculation, Kendrick allows his work and presence to speak for itself, while the rumors about behind-the-scenes pressure gain traction in the public imagination. This contrast between active management of public perception and strategic silence is part of what makes the story so compelling. As Part 3 comes to a close, the narrative reaches a tension point. It's no longer just a rumor about Drake. It's about power, influence, and control in the music industry. The alleged events surrounding the 2026 Grammys illustrate a larger truth. Kendrick Lamar has become a figure whose cultural sway challenges even the most established systems. Whether Drake's alleged intervention is fact or metaphor, fans interpret it as a reflection of Kendrick's dominance. And as the conversation spreads across social media, forums, and comment sections, one thing is clear: everyone is watching, and no one is willing to underestimate Kendrick Lamar's next move. As the 2026 Grammys drew closer, the rumor that Drake had allegedly intervened to limit Kendrick Lamar's presence gained even more traction. Social media had transformed the narrative from speculation into near certainty for many fans, with Twitter threads, Instagram reels, and TikTok breakdowns dissecting every possible scenario. The energy wasn't just about who would perform or win. It was about power, legacy, and control within the music industry. Every comment, every insider tip, and every ambiguous statement from involved parties added fuel to a fire that seemed impossible to extinguish. Fans began looking at Kendrick's recent trajectory in stark contrast to Drake's. While Drake has long dominated charts, streams, and award shows, Kendrick's influence operates on a different plane. It's the type of influence that shapes culture, defines eras, and commands respect without constantly demanding attention. Kendrick's strategic silence, deliberate release patterns, and critically lauded artistry positioned him as a force that couldn't simply be managed with conventional industry tactics. To fans, this level of dominance was enough to provoke fear, even among top-tier artists who traditionally wield enormous sway, like Drake. Industry observers added a new layer of complexity to the story. The Grammys are known for balancing multiple interests: ratings, corporate sponsorships, artist relations, and public perception. Fans suggested that any behind-the-scenes maneuvering, whether by Drake or anyone else, would be framed as protecting the show's balance or diversity of winners. It wouldn't look like obstruction. It would look like responsible decision-making. But fans argue that such reasoning is often a veneer for power plays, strategic nudges to ensure the narrative stays favorable to those who control the industry's levers. The social media reaction reflected the high stakes. Fans of Kendrick launched campaigns predicting his dominance, dissecting every rehearsal clip, interview, or performance teaser for signs of a Grammy moment. Meanwhile, skeptics highlighted the supposed intervention, asking why a show that historically celebrates music should suddenly be politicized. The discussion quickly became less about literal truth and more about perception. What fans believe happened influenced how they engage with the awards and the narrative surrounding the artists. Drake's alleged involvement also became a cultural touchpoint. Supporters of Kendrick framed it as evidence of the younger artist's rising dominance, suggesting that even someone as established as Drake could feel threatened. Critics framed it as standard competition, arguing that rivalry has always fueled ambition and industry strategy. Regardless of perspective, the conversation intensified, making Kendrick's 2026 presence a topic larger than a single award show. It was now a referendum on influence, legacy, and the unspoken rules of hip-hop hierarchy. Another dimension was Kendrick's team and management. While fans speculated about behind-the-scenes lobbying, little was revealed publicly about their strategies. Silence here served multiple purposes. It avoided giving legitimacy to rumors while also preserving leverage. In an environment where perception can become reality, controlling the narrative through strategic inaction can be as powerful as public statements. Fans interpreted this as a masterclass in maintaining dominance without overt confrontation. Kendrick's influence was growing not because of awards, but because of how carefully his team navigated the story. The fan response itself became a phenomenon. Hashtags predicting Kendrick's takeover went viral, with thousands of fans weighing in daily. They discussed every potential scenario, which performances could be limited, whether award categories might be shifted, and if the Grammys could even resist a cultural moment this significant. Some theorists claimed that Drake's alleged lobbying would backfire, as attempts to contain Kendrick's impact would only amplify it. Fans pointed to historical examples where perceived interference fueled audience support rather than suppression. By the end of Part 4, the story had moved beyond simple rumor or celebrity drama. The alleged Drake Grammys Kendrick situation had become a cultural lens through which fans examined influence, legacy, and control. Whether the intervention occurred or not, the narrative highlighted a critical truth. Kendrick Lamar's presence at the 2026 Grammys had already shifted the conversation. He wasn't just a performer or nominee. He was the axis around which debates about power, rivalry, and artistic dominance now revolved. Fans, industry insiders, and commentators alike were watching, knowing that the outcome would shape not only awards night, but how hip-hop history remembers this moment. As the 2026 Grammys approached, the tension surrounding Kendrick Lamar's presence became almost tangible. What began as a rumor about Drake allegedly lobbying the Recording Academy had grown into a full-blown cultural spectacle, with fans, media outlets, and industry insiders weighing in on every possible outcome. Social media threads were alive 24/7 with speculation. Would Kendrick dominate the night? Would Drake's influence, or perceived influence, alter the outcome? And most importantly, what would this mean for hip-hop history? Fans argued that Kendrick's influence had already shifted the playing field, regardless of what happened during the actual show. Every announcement, performance rehearsal clip, and interview became evidence in a larger narrative about power, strategy, and control. The conversation had expanded beyond awards. It was about legacy, cultural dominance, and who dictates the narrative in hip-hop. Fans pointed out that Kendrick doesn't just win awards, he defines eras. A moment like the 2026 Grammys could solidify that influence for decades to come. Industry speculation added further layers to the tension. Grammy insiders, speaking on background to media outlets, suggested that nothing about the show was simple. Decisions about performances, award presenters, and category arrangements often involve negotiations that fans never see. In this environment, the alleged Drake lobbying made strategic sense. If Kendrick was perceived as a risk, an uncontrollable force who could dominate the spotlight, fans understood why certain stakeholders might seek to limit that dominance quietly, without making waves. It wasn't about talent or merit. It was about optics, perception, and influence. Meanwhile, Drake's position remained a hot topic. Some fans portrayed him as genuinely concerned about balance, worried that a single artist dominating the show would overshadow others. Others viewed the alleged lobbying as fear-driven, a recognition that Kendrick's cultural sway was eclipsing even someone of Drake's magnitude. Regardless, the debate fueled intense discussions online. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and forums exploded with arguments dissecting motivations, strategy, and loyalty. Each day brought new theories. Each clip or teaser analyzed for hidden messages or indications of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Kendrick's team maintained their usual disciplined silence. While fans speculated endlessly, they offered no confirmation, no denial, and no hint of panic. This strategic inaction only heightened the sense that Kendrick controlled the narrative more than anyone else involved. Fans interpreted this silence as a signal that Kendrick's moment at the Grammys, whether challenged or not, was inevitable. His influence wasn't dictated by lobbying or politics. It was cemented by artistry, cultural resonance, and careful positioning. The stakes became even more pronounced when media outlets began framing the alleged conflict as a clash of legacies. Kendrick represented long-term influence, depth, and cultural authority. Drake represented consistency, mainstream dominance, and a formula that had worked for over a decade. Fans argued that a Kendrick victory or monumental performance at the Grammys wouldn't just be an award. It would symbolize a shift in how hip-hop greatness is measured. In this light, any perceived interference wasn't petty. It was recognition of power. Social media trends reflected the fanbase's growing anticipation. Hashtags predicting Kendrick's takeover went viral, fan campaigns intensified, and commentary about Grammy politics dominated online discussions. The narrative had evolved into a story of resistance versus inevitability, with fans framing Drake, the Grammys, or both as forces attempting to slow down cultural momentum. Yet even as these conversations swirled, the central truth remained. Kendrick Lamar's presence had already changed the conversation before any performance, award, or speech took place. By the time the show arrived, the rumored drama had become inseparable from the event itself. Every camera angle, every stage setup, and every presenter choice was analyzed through the lens of fan speculation. Whether or not Drake had actually begged the Grammys, fans treated the story as symbolic of larger tensions. The collision between independence and control, artistry and politics, influence and institutional power. The alleged behind-the-scenes lobbying became a narrative device to illustrate just how significant Kendrick's presence had become. As Part 5 concludes, one thing is clear. The 2026 Grammys were never just about awards. They were about cultural authority, strategic positioning, and the unspoken rules that govern influence in music. Kendrick Lamar's momentum, whether challenged or celebrated, had already reshaped the conversation, turning a single award show into a defining moment for hip-hop. Fans understood that the real story wasn't the performance itself. It was the narrative, the tension, and the undeniable power Kendrick now wields. And no matter what the outcome, the ripple effects of this story will shape the industry for years to come. This isn't just a Grammy rumor. It's a story about power, influence, and what happens when one artist challenges the status quo. Kendrick Lamar's rise to the 2026 Grammys isn't just about awards. It's about legacy, culture, and the unshakable impact of artistry that refuses to be controlled. Whether Drake actually intervened or not, fans are watching closely, knowing that every move, every performance, and every decision will be analyzed as part of a larger story. If you want to stay ahead of every update, every insider leak, and every viral reaction as this drama unfolds, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Join the conversation in the comments. Do you think Kendrick will dominate, or will industry politics try to slow him down? Share your predictions, theories, and opinions because this story isn't over yet. The 2026 Grammys could be historic, and you won't want to miss a single moment of it.